All right, guys, the tempo's painted. It's green. We'll talk about why exactly it's green. Moral of the story, though, is it looks a lot better. We're going to go over that. This next repair, though, not super excited about. They call this tool the Widowmaker for a reason. All right, guys, welcome back for another video in the shop. And I just wanted to premise this by saying I understand how ridiculous this looks now that I see the car behind me. The reason we only have the front jacked up is I just wanted to get the struts out of the car. And that is the sketchy repair that we're going to be working on today. And I'll show you why in a second. I'm gonna flip you over, but one of the springs on the Ford Tempo was actually broken in the back, so you were riding on the shock. The shock itself wasn't leaking, but the spring had completely snapped off. I'll show you exactly what I think actually accelerated this part failing, but when I went to go buy struts, which is gonna be the entire shock absorber and the spring assembly, they were $380 for this Tempo. And I only paid $400 for the car, and we bought it to flip it to make money, right? So I was like, I'm not gonna spend $380 on struts when that's almost what I paid for the car. So instead, what I did is I picked up a particular tool that is known to be pretty sketchy, and I also bought a set of coil springs. So I'm gonna flip you around and I'm gonna show you some of this stuff. Literally looks like this box is left over from 1993. I mean, this is how it showed up, all dirty, but you know, I don't care as long as it works. So let's get this open. All right, so you can see we got the springs for the Tempo. These were $50 for a pair of two versus $380 for the entire strut assembly. So obviously this was a better deal. All right, so now we'll show you. So these are the original springs. You can see this one is broken, it's snapped off. And what I think happened is these were pretty common back in the day, and it's actually like a stupid lift. So they put these in here and adjust these jam nuts to give the car a little bit better ride height. And then it also, I would imagine, would stiffen that spring up. But I think, you know, this is gonna put pressure on that spring. So this one, the broken pieces are actually in the back of the car, and it's right where these were that it snapped off. So what we have to do is take that nut off and get these old springs out of here. Now this one, because it's broken, isn't going to be so sketchy. I can just go ahead and pull that off, get this out of here. This one's under pressure, and I think what we're going to have to do, because of the tool we have to use, is we're going to have to cut these out of here first, because that's not going to allow us to compress the spring the way that we need to. Got the new springs. This is the Widowmaker. So this I picked up on Amazon for $26, okay? So really super cheap. So I saved a little bit of money even over the Harbor Freight version of this tool, and still with the tool and the springs, it was still cheaper. If I would have bought brand new struts like that, 380 bucks. So we're still coming out ahead, and I can use this again. You're gonna hook this on your spring, and then this is a safety pin you're gonna put in there so that hopefully you don't die. But I'll give you a little backstory on that. So when I was a technician at Toyota, you guys, we had an engine stand that had this big metal plate and an actual quality spring compressor. So you did it all on this engine stand, right? I actually had a strut very similar to these actually slip out of that, and I put my hand up to guard my face, and it hit my thumb and cut my thumb right down to the bone. I mean, these things are under a crazy amount of pressure, so this is super sketchy, and I'm not super excited about it, but I was even less enthused to spend $380 for struts on a car that we're gonna flip and we paid $400 for. So I'm gonna get set up here, and I think what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna cut those little spacer things out of the spring before we attempt to compress the spring. So give me 1 second, we'll show you what we're doing. All right, so we got the tool on the spring, and I just tried to set it about 180 off from each other, so it's pretty much even. Obviously, they're not going to be even from height to height because of the coil, but yeah, that is set on there. We got our pins in here. Now we got to gradually tighten from side to side, loosen the spring so we can take this out. Again, kind of sketchy. We got the spacer, lift, whatever the hell these things were. We chopped them out of there, tapped them with a hammer, and this whole process is just kind of sketchy. So let's see what happens. Hell yeah, we ain't freezing this winter, guys. all I can say is you guys better appreciate the Audi content and Fox body content that's coming along this winter. Wood burning stove, this sucks. This is the strut that we just finished, so you can see we got a new spring on there, and we're gonna go over a little trick because the rubber bushing on the bottom of the shock part of the strut assembly was actually worn off. So I'm gonna do another one with the Widowmaker clamps, and we're gonna show you what you can do if you run into this issue. The rubber on the bottom of this strut mount down here just completely disintegrated when I took the old spring apart. And you gotta be really careful when you're doing this stuff, you guys. If you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with one of these spring compressor tools because they call them a Widowmaker for a reason. You can get seriously injured putting these things together. So I'm gonna flip you around and we're kind of gonna walk through the process. All right, so you can see the old spring here, there's the new spring, and then this one actually had one of these old ghetto lifts on it like we talked about, so we cut that off. There is the top mount for the strut, and then what we're going to use is an 8mm and 18, because we actually have to grab the shock portion of the strut assembly itself with that 8 so that we can tighten that top nut on the mount. So we're going to get the Widowmaker on here and then we'll show you that. All right, so we went ahead and we got the spring compressor on the tool. It's just tight enough to where it's not going to slide around. Try to get it 180 degrees offset. And then it's really important once you start to compress this spring, do the equal amount of turns on both sides so it stays as even as possible. So like I'll do 3 up here and then 3 on the bottom one and keep alternating back and forth. But like I said, we have to address an issue with the spring mount that actually got worn off. So what you can do is, it's not going to last forever. It's not going to be, you know, the right way to do it. This is to get you by if you don't have access to one of these, which we do not. I didn't order them. So we're going to wrap this in electrical tape. That way it's not going to be metal on the bottom of that mount where the spring seats. So these springs do have a nice kind of rubberized powder coating on them, so that'll last for a while as well. But I want to make sure that it's quiet, doesn't make any rubbing noises, so we're going to wrap this portion in electrical tape. All right, so you can see we got a nice liberal coating of electrical tape just where that spring is going to seat down on the shock portion of the strut assembly. And like I said, this should just prevent us from having any metal on metal contact and potentially reduce any noise. So I know it's kind of hard to see in the camera, but we have quite a layer of electrical tape on here. Another thing to add is if you do this to one side, you might want to do it to both sides, because sometimes depending how thick that bushing is on the seat, you might change the height if you do this on one side and not the other side. So luckily for me, the rubber portion was missing on both sides, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to time lapse this next portion. I'm going to set you up. I'm going to tighten this, get it on there, and then yeah, we'll be good to get this tempo back together. All right, so we got the spring compressed and you can see we got everything lined up. This is butted up to the bottom of the mount, and then up top we actually still had the rubber bushing, which is nice. That's all butted up. Now you need the 8mm for that stud on top there so you can tighten the nut. I have the washer in place that goes on top. So now we can take and actually start this nut on here. Just finger tight, get some threads on there. You got to get it to the point where you can actually get at that stud with your socket. And now this part, I don't know, I don't have enough hands. I'm not going to be able to film this, but you get the idea. So we're going to put the socket on that stud and then tighten that down. All right, so now that we got that nut torqued down, we can safely remove our spring clamps. And again, just kind of do it 3 turns at a time, whatever. Just make sure it's equal on both sides, and then you're good to go. Whoa, guys, I'm slowing down here. Don't even care. Let me get my hazards on. Do you see it? We're going to get to 277 thou right now. Yeah, you know I pulled over to take a picture. We're just going to go nice and slow. Come on, please. I feel like an idiot right now. Yeah, let's go, we did it. I love this old piece of shit. All right, guys, so as you know, we got the struts completely put back together, and you can see we're putting them in the car. I need another set of hands. I tried putting the bottom in first, then putting the top in. I tried putting the top in, loosening the bolts. And what I need is somebody to be able to pry on these trailing arms here in the knuckle, because I'm having trouble getting the strut itself lined up with the knuckle. And it's not that it's that hard, just on particular cars, it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass without a second person here. So hopefully tomorrow one of my buddies will be around and can come help me do that. I just need a second set of hands on the pry bar. I was trying to do it with a jack, and you can see I have a crescent wedged in the knuckle there, and it's just not working. I need a second set of hands. So anyway, we got the struts back together, and now we just need to put them in the car, and this thing is ready for sale. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Again, if you haven't messed with any of these strut clamps before, be really careful because it's extremely dangerous. I'm super excited to get this second flip project sold and out of here because I could really use the room. I want to get going on the Fox body and the Audi projects. So you guys, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, drop me a comment down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and we'll see you next time.